This is a review for Thanos Rising, which is written by Jason Aaron. It's a 5-issue miniseries that they put out. Actually, the trade isn't even out yet, but I'm just going to go ahead and review it as is. Um, it's supposed to be kind of an attention getter for the upcoming Infinity story. Uh, and how this story really stands on its own right now, I can't say entirely. How it holds up as a selling point for Infinity, because there's something that's set up in here that really contradicts a lot of the history of Thanos, and really makes me wonder exactly what Thanos has left as far as a goal of any kind, and at least for what he sets out to do in the Infinity story. Um, if you've read Thanos in the past, this is going to be a story that's really going to change your perspective on him a little bit now. Basically, because what Jason Aaron has concocted in this story is kind of a very heavy retcon on the origin of Thanos. Now, we've had Thanos origin stories in the past. There was a little bit in Infinity Gauntlet that kind of explained where the Mad Titan came from. But kind of to agree with what Captain Logan said about him when he reviewed the last issue of this series, all the stories that were ever told with Thanos were that he's a menacing character, but he was still kind of fun for a lot of the stuff that he comes up with. And Aaron's story, which is probably going to be a pretty heavy canon from now on, and especially due to the fact that we're going to get this character at some point in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, is really a big game changer for Thanos. The entire tone of the story is written much more tragically than anything that we've read from Thanos in the past. If you're coming up to Thanos at this point, and if you haven't at least read Infinity Gauntlet, it's really going to skew your view of the character should you get into other stories with this guy. The best way that I can describe the way that Jason Aaron wrote this story is that we have Thanos, and kind of with the way that we're setting up for the tragic downfall of the character like Anakin Skywalker was unsuccessfully done with in the prequel trilogy. Just take and mix him with Mr. Deeds. The Kevin Costner movie about the schizophrenic guy with the person that he sees is telling him to go out and commit these horrible crimes. That's basically what this story amounts to. We're kind of doing some time jumps in here. Like most of the first, or a lot of the first issue focuses on his birth, and then time jumps to him as an adolescent in school. And we're shown the fact that his mother knows that there's something wrong with him, and she tries to kill him as a child. And somehow Thanos is aware of this. And it's kind of just this whole piece about this character is going to become a terrible thing, but he does not want to be. And it really presents an interesting argument on him. Basically what happens is we start out in the first issue with Thanos going on a field trip, and they're doing dissections in the science lab, and he cannot stand the sight of cutting into something dead. And then he goes off with some friends that he's made in school. He gets trapped in this cave-in, and he sees all these creatures that he was cutting up on the table, and he just wants to understand what death is, and he just develops into this giant antisocial personality. And as the story unfolds, he keeps going and looking and trying to understand, the ways of death and all that, and it's just something that never really clicked with this guy. There's kind of this half-ass attempt at saying that he's remorseful for the way that he is, but there's also part of him that just keeps wanting to do these things, and what the ultimate goal of the story is has a lot to do with the character that's hanging around him, and apparently only he can see. Um, I'm not even gonna sugarcoat and just play games with who the character is that he's seeing. I mean, he's seeing fucking death as a child, and he's doing everything that he can to uh, get her affections reciprocated to him with all of the death and destruction that he does. It's not actually revealed until towards the end of the story about who Death is in this, but it's kind of a really different changer with the fact that in past stories of Thanos, they have at least acknowledged that Death is a character, and people have interacted with her. And in this one, she's just kind of treated as a hallucination that Thanos is doing these terrible things for, and really, in an interesting angle, it kind of explains why he is known as the Mad Titan, but just takes that angle and just rolls with it in a much more darker sense. Basically, this story is, just really, it's a tragedy, is all it is, and it's just embroiled in shock value. He's basically being told to do all of these horrible things for this woman who may or may not even be there. And I mean, there's actually points in the story to where it flashes back over in the past, and we find out that he's been kind of nomading from planet to planet. He's knocked up all of these women, and he's got a bunch of children. And then when Death finally does reveal herself to him, he goes on like this killing spree, which will eventually lead back to his home planet. And the confrontation with him and his father is probably about the best point that you're going to get at the end of the story. Most of the stuff in here is good. Aaron does a really good job of really making you scared fucking shitless by the type of Thanos that he is writing in this. The problem that comes up with the story is the way that it ends. The entire idea of Thanos and his motivations for doing the crazy stuff that he's done in the past is that he is infatuated with death and is trying to absolutely annihilate all life just to get her. At the tail end of the story, he actually does get his wish. And actually reading that at the end of the story, I'm kind of halfway wondering if this is the actual death that has been visiting him, or if it's just a hallucination of what he perceives death to be. And this really kind of, like, if this actually becomes like the canon origin story of Thor, this would kind of